My friend is trying to sabotage my relationship, all because she got cheated on and is now trying to ruin everything in my life in some kind of jealous rage. And right now I feel so confused and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I feel really sick to my stomach right now, especially after the last few hours and days that I have experienced. I am emotionally drained. I'm confused, I'm lost, and I'm hurt. It's 4:30 in the morning and my brain won't shut off. So I'm coming to the internet to let it all out. So for a bit of context, I'm a 22-year-old female, and I have a new boyfriend who's also 22. We've only known each other for about 3 months, and recently we made it official, and we were introduced by my friend who I will call Laura. Now, Laura and I were never really close. I was close with her friend who invited me out to the club a few months ago, and that night, Lauren and me bonded, and she ended up introducing me to my now boyfriend the very next day. She hyped my boyfriend up before we met and encouraged me to go out with him, because apparently she has known him since she was little and expressed how good of a guy that he really was, even though I was in no place to be dating and also haven't had much luck with relationships as I struggle with anxious attachment and trust issues. But still, she insisted that he is actually really a sweet guy and we might just hit it off, and we did. Well, the whole issue from the beginning though was that Lauren was hooking up with my boyfriend's very close friend who we will call Joe, and this friend in particular wasn't the relationship kind of guy and made it clear to Lauren from the start that he is someone who's just gonna mess around, if you know what I mean. He didn't seem like a bad guy, but he definitely was the friend in the group that just wasn't mature enough for a relationship, and definitely is not to be trusted in the relationships. Well, Lauren and him started dating anyways though, and it seemed like they began dating the moment they saw my boyfriend, and they actually really did hit it off and click really well. Joe started acting all romantic with Lauren, and she fell right into it, even after he had shown her that he didn't respect her and couldn't commit. Now, my boyfriend had defended Lauren multiple times to Joe and expressed that he can't treat girls the way Joe does in relationships. But we also wanted Lauren, and she chose to get into a relationship with Joe. So basically, when Lauren and Joe started officially dating, my boyfriend took a backseat. He basically said, if they break up, don't say I didn't warn them, and I don't want to hear about the drama of their relationship anymore because it's way too much drama, which is completely valid. Now, Joe and Lauren dated for a good month until he cheated on her. My boyfriend and I found out through Joe because he called and told us that Lauren found stuff in his phone, and they ended up breaking up, and it was a massive mess. About a week after Lauren and Joe broke up, she began acting weird towards me and my relationship. She was now in this mindset where she hates all men, and she even was now acting different towards my boyfriend. She started asking me questions like, so are you happy with your boyfriend? Is he really making you happy? And truly, I found it weird, but I just kind of let it slide. She started then expressing how angry she is that my boyfriend is no longer defending her or doing anything about Joe cheating on her, and how she thinks he's fake and so are all of his other friends. She then started saying that she hates all men and all this other horrible talk about relationships. But yesterday is definitely when it all got really bad. I hung out with Lauren again, but I ended up grabbing an Uber to my boyfriend's house after his friends left as it was late, and she was also going to bed at the time. It all was perfectly fine until I got to my boyfriend's house and I told her one of his friends was there too, and he was about to head out. And it was then that she was not okay with not being invited. She then began spam calling me, and when I answered, she began yelling at me and my boyfriend for not including her, all because his other friend is there, and that my boyfriend is fake and a traitor, and all this other stuff. We explained that it wasn't like that, and that the friend is literally leaving. I had to explain to her that I'm allowed to hang out with my boyfriend and his friends too. Just because she introduced me to my boyfriend doesn't mean that she has to always be there. This really upset my boyfriend and I until today, and it really upset me because she called me again and started talking crap about my boyfriend, telling me every bad thing about him, including everything Joe told her about my boyfriend, and she said she thinks my boyfriend is using me and that if he is so fake towards her, he will absolutely do it to me. She then said that me and him should break up, and this was after months of her only saying the best things about him. She also admitted that she overhyped him and made it seem like he was a lot better of a guy than he actually was because she wanted to set us up and be a good wingman. She also wouldn't let me hang out on the phone either and would guilt trip me for hours on going back and forth and would say that my boyfriend is actually a good guy, but she just thought I should know all these things about him. She tried to ruin my relationship tonight, and after talking to him, I do feel better, but I can't help but feel disgusted. And I truly feel disgusted by her and not him. She violated my boundaries to the core, and if my boyfriend was a bad guy, then she is a bad person for setting me up with a bad guy and pretending he wasn't. Now, apparently she was having a bipolar disorder episode during this, and I'm not sure if that is relevant, but the way she was acting was very similar to things I've experienced, especially with other friends who deal with the same thing. I feel extremely sick and upset. I feel as though I can't cut her off because this girl is going to try and ruin my relationship. The first relationship I truly gave a chance and have fallen in love. At the back of my head, the side that overthinks and is anxious, that side is thinking, wow, maybe me and my boyfriend should break up. She thinks so horribly of him, and what if she really did lie about him the whole time, just so she could set us up and get close to Joe and have it all be a group? What if her opinion now really is the full truth, and my boyfriend is everything she is claiming now that the truth is out? So right now, I don't know who to trust, and at this point, I really don't know what to do. Okay, first of all, your friend is crazy. Like, she literally is trying to ruin your relationship, and it all stems from the fact that you have a boyfriend and she doesn't. Like, for some twisted, weird reason, she's jealous of you, and it just doesn't make any sense. So in my opinion, I would take everything she's saying with like a grain of salt and basically throw it right out the window. She is not actually telling you the truth either, by the way. She's only saying these things to try and get you to break up with your boyfriend. Like, that really is all that's going on here, and if I was in your shoes, I would not be taking this lady seriously in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for telling my wife about an incident at dinner with my sister-in-law and her friend, as they were both collectively talking garbage about my wife, saying that I could do a lot better than the person I was planning to get married to? Here's what happened. Okay, so my sister-in-law has this obnoxious friend who she met in college. This woman is one of those people with an undeserved sense of self-importance. She is not particularly attractive, overweight, and has a know-it-all abrasive attitude. Also, she is one of those big is beautiful type of women. And yes, while she does have her bachelor's degree, she thinks that this makes her better than anyone without a bachelor's degree. So my sister-in-law asked my wife and I to join her and this friend to come to dinner at a Chinese buffet. Now, dinner went okay until my wife got up to use the bathroom. At this point, this friend decides to bluntly tell me that she doesn't understand why I am in a relationship with my fiance since I am so much better educated than her. For reference, I'm an attorney and my wife is a nurse's aide. She then goes on to say that I am out of my wife's league, heavily implying that I should be dating her instead. She makes these comments in full earshot of my sister-in-law, who just sits there and says absolutely nothing. Now, I was highly offended on behalf of my wife and myself, and I replied with something like, well, she has other things going for her. And then I thought to myself, for one, she's much sweeter and more fun to be around, and way better looking than my sister-in-law's friend. I also pointed out that my wife, who was my fiance at the time, is not finished with her education yet, and she is certainly on my level as far as intelligence goes. So my wife returns and dinner goes on, and during this time, this woman is acting all buddy-buddy with the both of us. After we leave the restaurant, I told my wife about what this woman had said, and she is also offended, although we both had a good laugh at this woman's expense, given her lack of assets. So after this incident, my sister-in-law decides to move, and my wife and I agree to help out. And of course, my sister-in-law invites this same friend and the friend's significant other. Well, as it turns out, this friend decides that it's hot outside and keeps shutting and locking the door while I do all the moving work, along with the man my sister-in-law hired to drive the U-Haul. And I have to work twice as hard while this fat, lazy lump sits on her butt and keeps locking the stupid door. So after these incidents, my wife and I both decided that we both emphatically do not like this woman, and my wife tells my sister-in-law all of this. Fast forward a couple of weeks ago, and my wife is talking to my sister-in-law on the phone, and my sister-in-law brings up this friend and starts going on about how this woman has cancer and won't stop smoking. Well, after several minutes of this, my wife reminds my sister-in-law that she doesn't like this woman and reminds my sister-in-law exactly why. My sister-in-law then replies that my wife should stop talking to me, clearly implying that I should have not told my wife about this woman's crap talk about my wife, as well as her ham-fisted attempt at flirting. Now, incidentally, my sister-in-law never told my wife about the incident at the Chinese buffet and would have presumably let this incident be unknown to my wife had I not spoken up. Apparently, she thought my wife had no right to know. So am I the jerk for telling my wife about this incident and deciding that I don't like this woman? Is my wife the jerk for not liking this woman and not wanting to hear about this woman's bad luck in getting cancer? I honestly don't think I am, but at this point, I seriously need to know what to do. No, you're definitely not the jerk. Your sister-in-law's friend is a complete moron. Like, why on earth would she be like, wow, you deserve better better than her, and then try to insert herself in there as if that's going to be like, oh wow, you're right, you've won me over, I'm going to marry you instead. Like seriously, what was she thinking? That is so inappropriate and so disgusting. Just because someone doesn't have a college education or hasn't finished their education doesn't mean that they're not intelligent and not worth loving. And by the way, I know people with bachelor's degrees who are dumb as bricks, so for this lady to act like she's all high and mighty for getting a 4-year degree, like seriously, that is not that impressive. And don't get me wrong, it's a great accomplishment, but for someone to try and put themselves above other people intellectually just because you have one, in my opinion, is ignorant and just so stupid. So no, of course you're not the jerk. You absolutely had an obligation to tell your wife exactly what happened, especially since your sister-in-law was planning to keep this in the dark. My vacation time with my mom is finally coming to a close, and I feel both happy to be away from her mental space, but also very guilty considering all that we've been through. Here's what happened. Okay, I want to start off by saying that I'm both happy and guilty. Happy because I'm leaving my mom's mental space where I am not who I am. I can't be seen or heard, as my mom never figured out that the world around her is not what she decided it is. So when something doesn't go as she would plan it, like me for example, or some rule of hers, she then just dismisses it as crazy or calls it rubbish. Now, my mom is not a bad person. She would not steal or hurt anybody, and she also has certain internal rules that she just doesn't betray. She is a tough woman, but being around her is like giving up on life. Now, for reference, I am 55 years old, by the way. I'm not a spring chicken, and I testify that this problem has lasted a lifetime, especially if you're like me and you're lucky to build your successful life. My mom needs me as an audience, so she really cares not to lose me, and her ways of communication did not work for anyone else. She has no friends and no people who would check in on her. She did not do anything bad towards others, but she is not enjoyable, as she wants to prove only her points and destroy other people's views and arguments. This literally is her idea of a stimulating conversation, and naturally nobody likes it. So there's only me, the special one who will take care of her. Now, on the other hand, I do feel guilty. I feel I am failing to appreciate my mom in all her fullness, to feel her entitlement as a small, not essential thing in a grand view of her motherhood. But I simply can't. I know what she needs. I know I can make an effort and deliver it to her in small doses. I do make an effort once a day, even though I live in a different country from her, and I call to provide the audience and just listen to her every single day. Now, I have no problem with this part of conversation, but then she asks me how my day goes, and this is when it all gets harder. I just need to accept every time that she is not interested in my day, and instead she's looking at it in order to find places in my day's story where she can find some kind of disagreement, and these disagreements are also stimulating to her. I am basically giving her my life to play with, to amuse her. My life is like a toy in her hands. It took me a lifetime to understand it, and I still do provide her with my life as a toy, so she can feel important in some kind of way, but in return, she agreed to some boundaries that I placed. For example, she can't call me and only I call her, but I've also trained her that I never fail to call. In 25 years, I've never missed. Whether I've been sick or busy, I always provide her my call, and it works really well. My vacation time is also spent visiting her overseas, and it is the most difficult time for me as I'm deprived of my world, my life, my infrastructure, my function, as well as the mentality of my world. Everything shrinks down to the childhood apartment with its rules, issues, routines, and demands. I'm stuck with short blankets that never fully cover me, and I still don't understand what's up with these blankets. I am 5'6" and my mom is 5'2", so I guess the blankets are for her height, or maybe they're from times when people were just smaller. I don't really know. Communication is also very difficult. My mom would prefer to operate with me through signals. I can see how hard it is for her to consider me, but as a full adult who delivers a daily call, I am valued. Only with age have I started to see things more clearly. The broken mechanism of all this entitlement. I do feel compassion to it, but I know it's all in vain. My mom is not missing what she doesn't have. So it's my job to make an effort to provide her with an audience, because she herself cannot acquire or maintain the audience. It would require effort and a certain labor, and my mom just simply wouldn't invest into it. Maybe if she didn't have me, she would have found something else, but I am here and I do love her. But even then, I know that I can't make her happy. The only way to make her happy is to sit next to her in case she needs me. I ask for nothing and I do nothing, and I just provide her the audience when she wants to have it, and I just agree with her all the time after letting her take you apart and break you down. I honestly have no mind of my own, and even this will not make her happy, as then she just can't be proud of me. She literally needs that as well, as it proves her value in some kind of way, but being a successful person professionally and personally is incompatible with the mentality that she lives in. Now, I think she understands this on some levels, and it breeds resentment in her, as if she is not exactly winning in some kind of way, but this doesn't run deep, and for as long as she feels that she controls me, she will just accept it. Living with her for 2.5 weeks is about self-abandonment, lots of headaches, and lots of work on the brink of my mental capacity. There's not much physical effort, but there's also no rest, and I am in much better shape working my busy life overseas. Now, I'm not exactly sure why I posted this, but hopefully somebody can relate to the things that I've been going through. Yeah, this situation is really sad in a lot of ways, because it sounds like your mom is towards the end of her life, and she literally just doesn't have anybody. And sure, your mom does kinda sound like a jerk to a certain extent, but also it sounds like she has nobody else. And sure, you could just turn your back on her, but also it's your mom, so you want to try to have some kind of relationship towards the end of her life. Like, it's all super complicated and so nuanced that I really do have a lot of compassion for you. It really is a tough situation, and it's not as easy as like stepping away and being like, no, I'm not going to be in your life. So truly, I think you're a good person for putting up with all of this and choosing to still stay connected with your mom, even if she's not the most pleasant person to be around in the first place. Am I the jerk for not renting an apartment to my sister's friend after my sister promised her friend that I would be giving them this apartment? Here's what happened. Okay, so I own a small building and I bought it very cheap and I fixed it up myself. Now, I am not an awful landlord. My price is fair and I keep the building in good shape and I fix any problems that might appear. It's also relevant to say that I don't accept animals in the building. Now, I had an empty apartment, so I put an ad out online and I got a few candidates. I was then talking to my sister and I mentioned that I was searching for a new tenant. Now, I did my usual thing. I showed the apartment, I asked the candidates to fill out a form, but one candidate that came in was blind and he came with a friend. During the visit, he commented that he has a service dog. Now, I did comment that as per the ad, I don't accept animals, but he informed me that since it is a service dog, it legally doesn't apply as a dog. So I said okay, and we eventually moved the visitation to end. And for me, he automatically went to the last in the list. Besides not accepting dogs, I know I have at least 3 tenants who are allergic to dogs, and I won't inconvenience my already existing tenants. So I made my choice, and I called the candidates to inform them of my choice. Well, later in the day, my sister called me very upset. It turns out the blind guy is my sister's friend. She told me that her friend called and said that he wasn't chosen and was incredibly pissed off. And so, in turn, she was mad at me, saying that he was great, he would be the perfect tenant, and so on and so forth. But I told her that I just took a decision based on my impression and background check, and I had a candidate that I liked a lot more. Well, that's when she told me something that honestly blew my mind. She told me that she promised the apartment to her friend, and I told her that it's not her property to make promises or decisions for, and that she needs to call her friend and apologize, especially since I'm not changing my choice. Now, this happened 3 weeks ago, and she wouldn't respond to my text messages or my calls. And this weekend, we had a family party, and she literally gave me the cold shoulder the entire time. So am I the jerk for not picking her friend to live in my apartment? What should I do? No, you are not the jerk here. Your sister should not have done that. She had no right to go to her friend and be like, okay, don't worry, he's gonna give you the apartment. It's like, wait a second, what are you doing? This is not your property. You can't make those kind of calls. So for her to do that in the first place is completely ignorant. And also, you are well within your right to choose whoever you want. You own the building and it's your property. And sure, while your sister shouldn't have done that, I also think that it's really messed up that you didn't want this guy in your apartment, all because he had a service dog. Like, I'm not sure where you're from, but where I'm from, that could be seen as like blatant discrimination and you can get in a lot of legal trouble. So on that end, you definitely need to do better, but also your sister had no right to promise that apartment to her friend, because at the end of the day, this property does not belong to her. An entitled Karen comes into my convenience store and freaks out on me and my coworker in a way that is honestly completely inappropriate. Here's what happened. So I work as a supervisor at a small convenience store. In my area, there is a law where if we sell a product that is eligible to be returned for a bottle deposit, we must take it back if asked to. However, we are also directly across the street from a large grocery store that has redemption machines. The other day, an older woman comes in with her husband to buy some stuff and return some of the bottles. She is notorious for doing this and usually does this when we're super busy. When my cashier saw her come into the store, she asked me to stand behind the register with her in case there was any trouble. Now, I said of course, and I just pretended to be looking over the schedule. She rings the lady for her purchases and then starts counting the bottles and cans, and it all comes out to be worth about $2.40. My cashier tells the customer that she will process the bottle return today, but that if she comes back next time with over $1 worth of bottles and cans, we will refuse to do it and send her across the street because they are better equipped. Well, as expected, this lady starts throwing a hissy fit. She brings up the fact that it is illegal to refuse her, and that if we do, she's going to call the state police to report us and we will all be fired. Now, my cashier apologizes and mentions that the only reason she suggests for her to go across the street is that it will all be easier for her, the customer, but she just hates this idea too. She says that obviously we hate her and don't want her business. Now, my cashier tries to explain, but the customer keeps cutting her off, talking about how nobody cares about her anymore. Eventually, she starts yelling about how everybody she has ever loved is dead now, all because she is so old. Now, don't get me wrong, I felt bad about that. However, I also felt it was unnecessary for her to try and use that against us. After a few minutes of this, the transaction is over and she eventually leaves. But I honestly still don't understand why she doesn't just go across the street, but also I don't think I'll ever know the truth. Okay, first of all, I think someone in the comments of this post said it best. The reason she doesn't go across the street is because that means she has to use a machine and she can't yell at machines. She wanted a person in front of her that she could scream at because her life sucks. And that is not fair for you or your coworkers in the slightest. So hopefully this lady doesn't come back because the way she acted was completely inappropriate. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.